The forest seemed to hold its breath the night he arrived. For the girl they whispered about like a fading myth, an outcast born beneath a washed-out moon, silence had always been her one loyal companion. Averi was an albino omega, an oddity in a world that worshipped strength and vivid color. But tonight something broke that silence, a rhythm of heavy paws moving in perfect unison, too many to count. It wasn't the sound of a threat. It was the sound of fate approaching. With her heart pounding so violently, it felt ready to crack her ribs, she unlatched her door. And the life she knew slipped away. Averi existed in a world painted in muted tones. Her moss-cloaked cabin sat deep within the neutral lands, pressed between powerful packs, a forgotten place no one desired, so it became hers. To other werewolves, she was a rumor, a bad sign carried on the wind, the albino omega. When she shifted, her fur shone stark white, and in human form her eyes glimmered like washed-out violets, unsettlingly pale. In a world ruled by warm, earthen pelts and eyes of gold or deep forest green, she was an anomaly, a flaw. Her parents had been outcasts as well, though her memories of why were scattered and blurred. They died when she was 16, killed in what everyone called a rogue attack, leaving her entirely alone. For 5 long years, solitude had shielded her. She hunted for her own survival, tended a small patch of garden, and spoke only to the wind and the creatures that didn't fear her. Silence had become her comfort, a familiar quilt that wrapped her from the cruel glances and biting gossip of pack wolves. But tonight the quiet felt different. Dense. Electric like the charged air before a lightning strike. A storm was coming, just not one of rain and clouds. It began as a deep, steady pounding that trembled through the floorboards. It was the sound of weight of dominance. At first she mistook it for a wandering elk or a bear straying too close. She smothered her single candle and crept to the window, gazing through a narrow crack in the shutters. The moon gleamed bright silver overhead, washing the clearing in a ghostly glow. Her breath seized. The clearing was no longer empty. It crawled with wolves. Not the lean, desperate rogues that sometimes haunted the edges of her land. These wolves were massive monuments of muscle and power coats, ranging from obsidian black to steel gray to deep wood brown. They stood perfectly still, shoulders taut, heads lowered. They weren't circling her cottage as predators. They were forming a barricade alert, watching the forest beyond her home. Then came a different sound, slow, deliberate, footsteps crunching over fallen leaves. A man broke through the tree line, towering, broad enough to carry a kingdom on his shoulders. He wore dark leather pants and a simple charcoal tunic, but nothing about him was simple. Power radiated from him, raw, restrained, and absolute. His hair was black as a starless sky, and when he stepped into the open, the moonlight carved every sharp, commanding line of his face. He stopped, his attention locked on her tiny, weather-worn cabin. Averi felt that gaze like a searing brand pressed to her skin. It stripped away her years of quiet, her fragile peace. Every instinct screamed that he was an alpha of alphas. Her dormant omega nature surged, urging her to bare her throat, to submit without question. She balled her hands into fists, nails digging into her palms as she forced the instinct back. He took one step, then another. The wolves didn't move, their discipline chilling. He reached her door and halted, his presence alone, draining the air from the clearing. He didn't lift a hand to knock. He didn't need to. The silence bent to his will. Every instinct she had urged her to hide, to crawl beneath her bed and beg whatever force ruled the night to make him leave. But something else, a forgotten spark of curiosity and a pull she couldn't understand, pulled her forward. Her hand shook as she touched the wooden latch. Her heart thundered wildly. She opened the door. He stood before her like a king at the threshold of a shack. His eyes, now clear, burned molten gold, blazing and unforgiving. They swept over her, her moon-pale hair tumbling to her waist, her worn dress, her bare feet. His expression revealed nothing. But his scent, pine after rainfall, earth, and clean ozone, was intoxicating, terrifying. "A very," he said. Her name wasn't a question. It was a claim. His voice was low gravel rough, thrumming in her bones. Words deserted her. She could only stare at the man whose wolves filled her yard, the alpha king she'd heard about only in frightened whispers. King Ryder. And in that instant when his eyes locked onto hers, reality splintered. A fierce primal recognition slammed into her chest. Something ancient, older than blood, older than the moon, ignited like lightning, tearing through her soul. Mate. The word didn't echo in her ears, but deep inside her marrow. And in the Alpha King's molten gaze, Avery saw the same stunned, unwilling acknowledgement. The word hovered between them, shimmering like heat in the air. Mate. The shock hit her like a physical blow, her knees threatening to buckle. Her Omega instincts rejoiced, stretching awake, aching to yield to this overwhelming, magnetic male. But the woman, the outcast who had survived on her own, reeled in fear. Ryder's jaw tightened, something harsh and possessive flickering across his features before he crushed it down. He had felt it too. He hadn't come here for this. Yet now fate had twisted everything. "You will come with me." His voice left no room for argument, command, cold and absolute, born of a king used to unquestioned obedience. Avery found her voice, though it scraped out thin and broken. "No." One of the huge black wolves at the tree line growled low and thunderous like shifting stone. Ryder shot it a cutting glance over his shoulder, a silent order delivered in a heartbeat. The growl died instantly. His blazing gold stare returned to her. "This is not a request." His tone was soft, dangerously soft. "Your life as you know it is over. The neutral lands are no longer safe." "They've been safe enough for 5 years," she countered, defiance, flaring after years buried under dust. "I don't know who you think you are, but you need to leave my home." A humorless smile ghosted across his lips. "You know exactly who I am. As for what I want, that's more complicated. But right now what I need is you. My enemies found out you exist. They're coming." "Your enemies?" She let out a strained laugh. "I have nothing to do with you, or whatever political war you're waging." The idea was ridiculous. She was no one, practically a ghost. Who would be hunting her? Ryder stepped forward, crossing her threshold like it belonged to him. The tiny space shrank around his massive presence. He was so close she could feel the heat radiating off him, could breathe in his scent, pine after rain, earth storm-charged air. "You have everything to do with me," he murmured, his golden eyes tracing the curve of her throat. "Your lineage, Avery." "My lineage," she breathed. "My parents were outcasts. We had nothing. They weren't just exiles." Ryder's stare sharpened, cutting straight into her. "They were guardians. They protected something that belonged to my bloodline, something stolen generations ago, a relic of immense power, and you are the key to finding it." Avery blinked at him, thrown. "A relic, guardians." It sounded like some story told around campfires. "You're mistaken. We had nothing, just this place, and a few scraps. They're all gone." "No." His voice dropped to a deep rumble. "It's not gone. It's hidden, and its magic is woven into your blood. Only you can lead me to it." He reached out, brushing a strand of her stark white hair. The touch burned, sparking through her, as the mate bond pulsed hard, hungry. "This is no accident," he said quietly. "Your appearance marks you as one of them." She jerked back, heart thundering, equal parts fear and something shamefully heated. "I won't help you." Ryder's patience, never a generous commodity, finally snapped. Power crackled through the air. His alpha aura crashed over her, crushing, absolute, suffocating. "You think you have a choice," he growled. "Your parents died to protect their secret. You're an untrained Omega alone. You cannot survive what's hunting you. His voice dropped to a brutal truth. I'm offering you protection. The only kind that matters. Come with me, or die here, maybe tonight. The words were harsh, but they rang true. The vision of the wolves outside, disciplined, deadly, flashed across her mind. They hadn't come to threaten her. They were here for something far bigger. They were a barrier. A living shield she had never wanted yet, one that now wrapped around her like a silent decree. Tears of frustration and helplessness stung Averi's eyes. Her entire life she had been boxed in by labels, Albino, Omega, outcast. And now this man, this king dripping power and command, was telling her she was more than that. A target, a prize, a key. Her quiet existence was being torn apart, and he wasn't asking for her agreement. He was simply announcing her fate. And beneath the fear and anger, the newly awakened bond between them pulsed with a raw, burning truth. Being near him felt deep in her bones like home. It was a truth she despised, a weakness she could not afford. What is this relic? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. It's called the Heart of the Moon, Ryder said. With it I can end the plague that's been killing our people. Averi's blood iced over. The plague rumors of it had reached even her lonely corner of the wilderness. A wasting sickness that dulled werewolf senses, weakened their shifts, and eventually stole their lives. Many called it a curse, one with no cure. You will be treated with respect, Ryder continued, catching the change in her expression. You'll have warm quarters, food, new clothes, safety inside my fortress. All I ask in return is your help in finding the heart. It wasn't a question. It was the price of her surrender. He was offering her a gilded cage in exchange for a secret he believed she carried. With a long, shaking breath, Averi managed a small, sharp nod. There was no real choice. Staying meant death. Going with him. That was merely a different kind of dying, one where her freedom would be the first casualty. Good. His voice softened only slightly. He turned toward the door. Gather what you can carry. We leave now. Moving as if in a dream, she reached for a worn satchel. She packed the only objects that mattered: her mother, Ellen's weathered herb journal, the smooth river stone Jaren had once pressed into her palm, and a spare tunic. It was everything she owned her entire life, reduced to almost nothing. When she faced him again, Ryder was watching her with an unreadable expression. He gestured for her to walk ahead. Stepping into the moonlit clearing felt like stepping into another world. The wolves, dozens upon dozens, were already on their feet. Their eyes glowed amber and green, every gaze locked onto her. A ripple of low growls and restless whines moved through their ranks. They could smell the bond tying her to their king. They could smell Omega. Stranger. Outsider. Ryder stepped behind her, radiating heat and authority. They won't touch you, he murmured, his voice a low rumble meant only for her. You're with me now. You are mine to protect. The possessiveness in his words sent another shiver through her, half terror, half something dangerously close to longing. She was no longer Averi, the ghost in the woods. She had become a possession, a key, and the unwilling mate of the Alpha King. The journey to Ryder's stronghold, Blackwood Keep, blurred into a swift, silent flight. Averi rode the massive sable wolf beneath her Cade Ryder's beta, and second, Ryder ran beside them in his wolf form, a colossal black beast dwarfing even Cade. He stayed pressed close, a dark shadow guarding her flank. The rest of the royal guard, the wolves who had surrounded her home, moved as silent phantoms through the forest, their paws barely whispered against the ground. They ran for hours, the world streaking past in silver moonlight and tangled shadows. Averi clung to Cade's thick fur, her thoughts numbed. She was a prisoner, dragged from the only home she had ever known. Yet deep inside, a shameful spark flickered. Thrill, awe, the intoxicating sensation of speed and power, of belonging to a pack that moved like a single deadly mind. It was unsettling. It was exhilarating. They reached Blackwood Keep at sunrise. It wasn't a stone castle, but a fortress carved directly into the mountain's heart. Towers and battlements seemed to grow from the sheer granite cliffs joined by rope bridges and stairways etched into the rock itself. A waterfall thundered beside it, feeding a raging river that served as a natural moat. It was wild, majestic, brutal beauty, molded by werewolf hands. As they passed through the towering gates, werewolves in human form halted to stare. Whispered murmurs rippled like leaves in wind. Averi felt their stares curious, wary, hostile. They saw her moon-pale hair, strange violet eyes, worn clothes. They smelled Omega. They smelled the Alpha King's claim, wrapped around her scent. Averi pulled her cloak closer, wishing she could disappear into the mountain stone. Ryder shifted back into his human form with effortless grace, a servant hurrying forward to hand him clothing. Once dressed, he crossed the space to Averi just as Cade lowered himself so she could climb down. Ryder's hands settled at the small of her back, a touch that felt both steadying and unmistakably possessive. "Ignore them," he murmured, voice low and commanding. "They'll learn to respect you." He guided her through crowded courtyards and up winding staircases, carved deep into the mountain. The air warmed as they climbed, illuminated by glowing crystal veins embedded in the stone. At last he stopped before massive carved oak doors. "These will be your chambers," he said. "You'll be safe here. No one enters without my consent." He pushed the doors open, and Averi drew a sharp breath. The room dwarfed her entire cottage. A huge bed layered with thick furs sprawled along one wall, while a fire roared in a towering stone hearth. A door at the far end revealed a bathing chamber where steam rose from a sunken pool fed by natural hot springs. It was beautiful. It was luxurious. It was a cage, shining and confining all at once. A young woman with gentle features and warm brown eyes stood waiting. Her scent marked her as a beta. "Your Majesty, this is Nira," Rydor said. "She will attend to you." He shifted his attention to the girl. "Nira, this is Averi. She is under my personal protection. See that she lacks for nothing." Then to Averi more softly. "Rest. We'll talk later." He turned and left the heavy door, shutting behind him like the closing of a vault. Averi stood alone with the stranger. "Welcome to Blackwood Keep," Nira said with a kind smile. "I've prepared a bath for you, and clothes. The king thought, well, he thought you'd appreciate something comfortable." She motioned to the bed where several tunics and soft leather trousers lay neatly folded in muted colors, cream, gray, forest green. Averi ran her fingers over one tunic. It was softer than anything she'd ever owned. That simple kindness tightened something in her throat. Over the next few days, Nira became the only warmth in the fortress. She brought Averi meals, answered every question, and never once commented on her unusual looks. From Nira, Averi learned more about the plague tearing through their world, how it began with a cough, then weakened a werewolf's shift before stealing their life in slow agony. Healers were helpless, packs were terrified, and Ryder carried the weight of it alone. But beyond Nira's gentle presence, the keep was hostile. When Averi finally ventured beyond her chambers, Nira at her side, she was met with suspicion, whispers, and thinly veiled contempt. White witch, pale omen, Omega. The court was a nest of vipers, and she was the foreign spark thrown into their midst. The harshest venom came from Draven Alpha of the Stonecrest Pack, Ryder's former rival. He was striking in a cold, cruel way, with sharp lines and icy eyes that held no warmth. He didn't bother hiding his hatred. He cornered her one day in a wind-swept garden. "So you're the king's newest pet," he drawled, blocking her path. His scent was sharp, metallic. "An Omega and a flawed one. Tell me, what tricks did you use to snare him?" Averi stiffened even as her pulse hammered. "I'm no one's pet. Move!" Draven let out a low laugh. Fiery. Ryder always did enjoy the unusual. "But don't delude yourself. Your place isn't secure." He leaned in, voice dripping poison. "He wants the relic." Once he has it, you'll be cast aside. A fragile little thing like you could never be a queen. His words sliced through her, like a blade echoing her own darkest fears. She was a means to an end. Ryder himself was a maddening paradox. He came to see her every day, bringing books on werewolf lore and pressing her with endless questions about Jaren Ellen and her childhood. Any detail, no matter how small, might lead him to the heart of the moon. Their conversations were tense, always teetering between resistance and submission. Two wills clashing again and again. She offered him only scraps. He pushed with quiet authority, his alpha presence, a heavy force she could feel even across the room. And the mate bond. It was torture. Whenever he was near her body, betrayed her heartbeat, quickening, skin, heating instincts, screaming to draw closer, to breathe him in, to surrender. And she saw it in him too. Sometimes she caught him looking at her golden eyes darkened with hunger. He quickly smothered. They were two magnets dragged together by fate, fighting an impossible pull neither of them wanted to acknowledge, and neither of them could escape. One evening, Ryder brought her a small, ornately carved wooden box. This was recovered from the ruins of your parents' home after the attack. He said, his tone unreadable. Do you recognize it? Avery accepted the box. The wood was dark and polished smooth with age. A faint, familiar scent clung to it. Lavender and cedar, her mother Ellen's scent. Her fingers shook as she traced the carvings of moons intertwined with curling vines. She didn't remember the box itself, but the feeling, the scent. Something deep within her stirred like an unopened door in her memory. She lifted the lid. Inside, resting on faded velvet, was a single silver locket. The moment her fingertips brushed its cool surface, a blinding burst of white light exploded behind her eyes. An image scorched across her mind, her mother frantic with fear, thrusting the locket into her small hand. Never open it. Ellen's voice echoed through the memory. Promise me, Avery. Never let anyone open it. Keep it safe. It is our legacy. It is our curse. Avery gasped, stumbling backward as the box clattered to the floor. The vision vanished, leaving her breathless and trembling. Ryder was instantly at her side, gripping her shoulders to steady her. What happened? He demanded, golden eyes blazing. What did you see? She stared up at him, wide-eyed. My mother. I remembered my mother. She had found the first piece of the puzzle, except it didn't feel like a clue to a relic. It felt like the edge of a nightmare. The memory left Avery shaken to her core. It wasn't just recollection. It was raw terror imprinted into her soul, a warning passed down through blood. It is our legacy. It is our curse. Ryder pressed harder, sensing her defenses faltering. He demanded every detail. What the locket looked like, the exact words Ellen spoke where they had been. I don't know, Avery cried, pulling out of his grip. It was just a flash. I was a child. I don't remember everything. Frustration pulsed off him, so strong she could practically feel it vibrating in the air. Think, Avery. The fate of our people may depend on what you saw as a child. Don't you think I'm trying? She snapped, anger flaring hot. You dragged me from my home, locked me in this mountain, and now you expect me to magically recall secrets you've chased for generations. She swallowed hard. I saw my mother's terror. This isn't a puzzle for you. It's my past. Her outburst froze him. A muscle ticked in his jaw. For the first time, she saw something in his eyes, other than the commanding king. She saw the man beneath, tired, burdened, desperate. The plague took my younger sister, he said, quietly stripped of authority. Mira was barely a teenager. She hadn't even met her mate yet. She died before she ever had a chance to live. The honesty carved into Avery's heart. His pain rolled through the mate bond, a deep, echoing ache that pulled at her chest. I'm sorry, she whispered. He gave a short nod, and the mask of the king slid back into place. Just try to remember. After he left, Avery couldn't find peace. The locket consumed every thought. Could it really be the heart of the moon? It seemed too small, too ordinary. And why would Ellen call it a curse? With Nira's help, she began scouring the keep's vast library, a circular cavern lined with ancient scrolls and leather-bound volumes, thick with dust and history. While Nira searched for any mention of the heart of the moon, Avery combed through records, looking for her family name, Thorne. They found nothing, not a single page, not even a stray reference. Doesn't make sense, Nira muttered. Every Pack family exiles included has a record. Someone doesn't want us to find it. Avery whispered, dread sinking into her bones. My parents. The attack. The missing records. It's all connected. That night the nightmares came, not of the fire, not of teeth or blood, but fractured visions, the scent of harsh clawing incense, the hum of voices chanting in a strange, forgotten tongue, shadows moving in a circle, Ellen's panic and a cold watching presence she couldn't name. A ring of shadowed figures, heat searing her shoulder like a burning brand. Avery jolted awake with a sharp gasp, instinctively clutching the spot, only to find her skin smooth, untouched. But the dream left her shaken, and underneath the fear, something inside her hardened. If Ryder's archives held nothing for her, then she needed to dig into her own fractured past. She needed something to spark the memories buried deep in her mind. The wooden box had done something, so she turned to Ryder and asked to see whatever else had been salvaged from the ruins of her cottage. He guided her into a secured chamber carved into the mountain's lower vaults. Weapons lined the walls, relics rested on locked pedestals, but on a single table lay the remnants of her family's life. A chipped clay pot, a tarnished silver comb, and a small stack of journals, worn soft by time. Her breath caught. She carried one of Ellen's herb journals, but these were her mother's personal diaries. With Ryder standing close enough that she felt his presence like heat at her back, Avery settled at the table and opened the first book. Ellen's graceful handwriting slid across the pages, not recounting daily life, but filled with charts of constellations, phases of the moon, and cryptic warnings scribbled in the margins. When the pale moon rises, the child marked by its light will awaken. She will be both the key and the lock. Avery felt the blood drain from her face. The key and the lock. The ghost of the forest. That was the name the Pack used for her. This wasn't rambling paranoia. Ellen had known. She had known Ryder would one day come for her. Avery flipped through the diaries at a frantic pace. Near the final pages of the last book, she found an entry that froze her hand mid-turn. Dated 1 week before the fire. He knows. The Elder has found us. He suspects what Avery is, what she will become. We cannot let him take our daughter or the locket. We leave tonight. May the moon guard her. She is the last of the moon-touched. Moon-touched. Avery whispered the phrase aloud. Ryder stiffened behind her, the air around him tightening. What did you just say? I'm the last of the moon-touched, she repeated, voice trembling. My mother wrote it. He stared at her, golden eyes widening with disbelief and something dangerously close to awe. That's impossible, he breathed. They were legend stories told to pups. What does it mean? Avery demanded. Ryder lowered his voice, reverent and shaken. They were a lineage of Omegas blessed by the moon herself. Seers, healers, oracles who carried magic older than any alpha. They could quiet the rage of the strongest wolf, mend wounds no one else could, and glimpse the threads of fate. They were considered the heart of our people until the Pack Wars wiped them out. Everything inside her clicked sharply into place. Her white hair, her pale skin, her mother's fear, the locket. Her parents hadn't been protecting a relic. They had been protecting her, and Draven's sneering insult echoed in the back of her skull, a pale little thing. Like you could never be a true queen. He was wrong. Her bloodline was older, rarer, more revered than even Rydor's. A fragile but fierce spark of pride lit inside her. She wasn't a mistake. She was inheritance. She turned to share the realization with Rydor, and the storeroom doors slammed open. Draven stood framed by torchlight eyes burning with fury. Several Stonecrest alphas crowded behind him, each one bristling with hostility. "I knew it," Draven spat, glaring at Avery. "The king drags us stray into our keep, and suddenly ancient myths crawl out from the shadows." He pointed at her with a trembling snarl. "She's a witch, a curse. She brought the plague with her. She didn't come to cure it." "Draven, stand down!" Ryder growled, stepping in front of Avery so fast she barely saw him move. His whole body coiled with protective instinct, a low rumble building in his chest. "I will not." Draven snapped, his alpha aura erupting like a storm slamming against Rydor's. "She's bewitched you. We're ending this now. We purge her before she destroys us all. Seize her." Draven's command cracked through the storeroom like a whip. His warriors surged forward in a violent wave. The quiet chamber, mere moments ago filled with relics and dust, erupted into a storm of chaos. The Stonecrest alphas moved with cold precision, but Ryder's royal guard poured from the shadows of the hall, intercepting them with brutal force. Bodies collided, snarls filled the air, claws scraped stone, and the metallic ring of silver weapons clattered against the walls. Ryder didn't hesitate. He shoved Avery behind him, his voice a thunderclap. "Stay back!" His features, already twisted bones, shifting as the alpha within him snapped to the surface. But Draven wasn't focused on the fight. His gaze stayed locked on Avery, as if she were the disease, eating the heart of the keep. While the guards clashed, he slipped past the main fight with terrifying speed. Before Ryder could fully shift, Draven was on her. He struck like a blade, one hand tipped with thick black claws closing around her throat. He slammed her into the stone wall, hard enough to rattle the entire room. The impact stole the air from her lungs. "This ends now, witch," he hissed, icy eyes burning with savage hatred. His claws broke her skin, warmth sliding down her neck. Pure paralyzing fear seized her, but rage rose up harder. A deep, primal fury born from years of being mocked, hunted, dismissed, surged through her. The legacy Ellen had died for. The power her parents had shielded. She would not let it be snuffed out by this arrogant brute. As Draven squeezed, ready to crush her throat, something inside Avery ignited. A blinding burst of silver white exploded from her. Not fire, not heat. Moonlight. A shockwave of icy brilliance pulsed outward from her body, ripping Draven off his feet and hurling him across the room like a torn rag. He crashed into a weapons rack 20 feet away, steel raining around him as he hit the ground, dazed. Silence slammed down over the room. Rydor half-shifted fangs bared, froze in place, golden wolf eyes wide with disbelief. His warriors and Draven's alike halted mid-strike, staring. Avery hovered an inch off the ground. Breath-ragged pale hair billowing around her like a moonlit halo. The small wounds on her neck stitched themselves closed before their eyes. Her previously pale violet eyes now glowed like twin stars blazing with otherworldly power. The moon touched had awakened. She felt everything, the stone pulse beneath her feet, the pounding hearts of the wolves, the faint pull of distant starlight, filtering through the mountain. The mate bond thrummed, Ryder's awe-shock and fierce pride flooding through her, and beneath Draven's sputtering breaths, she tasted his fear. He crawled upright, face twisting with fury and disbelief. "You see," he screamed, pointing a trembling claw at her. "She's an abomination," but no one was listening to him. Every wolf in the room stared at Avery with a mixture of fear and reverence. Creatures of the moon, witnessing its power reborn. Gradually the light around her faded. Her feet settled softly onto the stone. Exhaustion washed over her, but beneath it a steady, humming strength. Ryder stepped toward her, shifting back into human form. His hand lifted slowly, hovering near her shoulder, as if afraid she might disappear. "Averi," he whispered, reverence shaking his voice. The moment shattered with a slow, deliberate clap. Every head turned. Elder Malik stood in the doorway, thin, stooped, always unnoticed. Until now. Magnificent Malik rasped a smile, curling across his lips, without reaching his eyes. A sight I feared I would never witness again, the moon-touched reborn. Malik Rydor growled, tension coiling in his voice. "This is not the time." "Oh, but it is," Malik said as he stepped forward. The frail facade slipped away, revealing an ancient, chilling authority beneath. "It is the perfect time." He flicked a dismissive glance at Draven. "You oaf. You served your purpose well." Draven blinked, confused. "What are you talking about, old man?" "I was eliminating the threat." "You were the spark," Malik said calmly. "I needed her power awakened, revealed publicly. And you, in your predictably violent fashion, provided exactly what I required." A terrible understanding washed over Ryder. "You," he whispered, voice dropping dangerously. "You've been fueling Draven's paranoia, feeding his ambition, pushing him toward this." "Ambition," Malik chuckled darkly, "is such an easy thing to bend." His clouded eyes fixed on Averi, with a gleam that wasn't age, it was hunger. "For generations my bloodline stood beside the throne, whispering counsel, guiding from the shadows. The Alphas fought and roared, but we held the true power." His lips curved into a wolfish smile. And yet one piece was missing, the heart of the moon. The smile sharpened. "You see, the legends were wrong. It isn't a stone or relic. It's a living bloodline, a source of power that breathes." He pointed a trembling finger at her. "It's her. Her parents knew it." His tone dripped with venom. They refused to let their daughter's gift serve the greater good, so they hid her. Malik's smile turned cruel. "I had to intervene. A rogue attack arranged personally. But they were clever, hid her so well, even my spies couldn't trace her. Not until I found the pale Omega, living quietly beyond pack borders." The color drained from Averi's face. The rogue ambush. It hadn't been fate. It had been murder. Her parents' murder. "The plague," Ryder growled, stepping protectively in front of her. "You caused it." Malik spread his hands as though presenting art. "A masterpiece, isn't it? A slow rot born of forbidden alchemy. It weakens packs, drives them to desperation. They beg for salvation, and I'll give it. Once I tear the heart from this girl and claim its power, I'll cure the plague. And they'll crown me their rightful king." The truth hit Averi like a blade. Draven was just a pawn. The relic hunt a trap. Every trail Rydor had followed led straight to her. "You're a monster," she breathed, her voice shaking as moonlight thrummed under her skin. "I'm a visionary," Malik corrected. He lifted his hands and the air itself seemed to darken. Shadows pooled at the corners, twisting until two cloaked shapes stepped forth. Their scent was wrong. Not wolf, not human. It reeked of death and corruption. "Take the girl," Malik commanded coldly. "The king is no longer your concern." The creatures moved like smoke, silent, fast, unnatural. The royal guards, drained from their earlier clash, hesitated. Rydor did not. With a roar that shook the mountain's bones, he lunged, more beast than man, now a blur of golden fury. He collided with the first creature in a violent storm of claws and teeth, his every instinct screaming to protect her. The storeroom became a battlefield again. Draven, realizing the manipulation, let out a guttural cry of rage and turned his wrath on the true enemy. His alphas followed their loyalty, shifting in an instant. The same wolves who'd fought moments ago now stood shoulder to shoulder. In the center of it all, Averi's pulse thundered. Malik ignored the chaos, stalking toward her, his gnarled fingers, outstretched eyes gleaming with covetous delight. "Such brilliance," he rasped. but it's untamed. Let me show you what your power can truly do." Averi's power rose like a tide. She felt the moon's magic answer her, but it was wild, unsteady. Malik murmured an incantation. A shimmering shield of black energy wrapped around him, absorbing her burst of silver light like smoke into a void. So raw, he mocked softly. "But I'll take it all." Panic clawed at her chest. He was right, she had power but no control. She was a child holding a weapon, forged for gods. Then her mother's words echoed inside her, the key and the lock. Her breath hitched. She was both. The power was the lock, but something else was the key. Her hand flew to her throat. Nothing. Her gaze darted frantically until she saw it. The wooden box half buried beneath a fallen tapestry. She had to reach it. Averi dashed across the chaos, dodging claws and blades. Malik saw her move and quickened his pace. Malik's voice had turned guttural now, a dark chant that crawled through the air and made the room feel colder, heavier. The shadows bent toward Averi like living things reaching for her. She snatched the box from the floor, trembling fingers fumbling with the clasp until it sprang open. Inside lay the silver locket, cool, simple, and worn with time. "Never open it," her mother's voice whispered from memory. But Ellen had raised her to hide. Averi was done hiding. This was her fight. For Ryder, for the wolves, for the legacy her parents had died to protect. Malik's shadow fell over her, his face twisting into triumph. "It's over, child." With a breath that felt like defiance itself, Averi clicked the locket open. It wasn't a keepsake. No portrait. No strand of hair. Inside was a single crystal small as her thumb, dull and colorless, until it caught her touch. Then the world seemed to stop breathing. The crystal pulsed softly, drinking the light from the room. A glow milky and alive beat in rhythm with her heart. And as her skin touched it fully, something vast and ancient within her unfurled. Her power, once wild and untamed, snapped into perfect focus. The crystal was a lens channeling the chaos inside her into a single brilliant current. Knowledge flooded her, not learned but remembered. The kind passed through bloodlines and whispered by moons long dead. She understood now. The locket wasn't the heart of the moon. She was. The crystal was the key and amplifier, unlocking everything dormant inside her. Malik froze mid-stride, greed warring with terror in his face as silver light erupted from her in waves so bright it burned his shadow to dust. "Impossible," he shrieked. Averi's voice when she spoke was layered, with the echoes of every moon touched before her, ancient, commanding, divine. "You murdered my parents." The air trembled. "You poisoned our people. You threatened my mate." The crystal's light pulsed with her heartbeat. "And you will harm no one ever again." She didn't hurl energy. She reached deeper, grasping the very corruption met inside Malik and his creations, and purged it. The two cloaked assassins screamed as their forms unraveled, breaking apart into particles of light that drifted away like embers on the wind. Malik howled, engulfed by silver radiance. His dark shield shattered with a sound like glass exploding. The alchemy that had sustained him for decades turned against him, stripped bare and cleansed by something older, purer. He fell to his knees, his skin shriveled, his strength evaporated, his stolen youth crumbling into dust. The cataracts in his eyes cleared, and what remained was raw human fear. He stared at his shaking hands, realizing too late what he had lost. Silence fell. The fighting ceased. Warriors, Ryder Draven and the others, stood bloodied, but breathing, watching in stunned reverence. Ryder approached slowly, golden eyes soft with something she'd never seen before, pure, unguarded love. He didn't see a weapon or a relic. He saw her. He reached for her hand, closing her trembling fingers over the locket. "Averi," he murmured, voice rough and thick with emotion. The power ebbed gently, settling back into her, coiling within the crystal's heart like a sleeping tide. She was still herself, but more. The ghost of the forest was gone. In her place stood a queen. Her gaze met Ryder's, the alpha who had once dragged her into his world, and now the man who would stand beside her in it. The bond between them no longer felt like chains. It was an anchor, solid, chosen. Ryder, she whispered, and this time she leaned into him, not from instinct, but choice. He caught her arms wrapping tight around her, burying his face in her hair. It wasn't possession. It was relief. It was love carved out of fire and war. By dawn, Blackwood Keep had changed forever. Malik, stripped of his sorcery and secrets, was imprisoned deep within the mountain. Draven, humbled and broken by what he'd done, knelt before Ryder, not as a rival, but as a true subject. Then he turned to Avery, bowing his head. "My Luna," he said hoarsely, "I was blinded by ambition and fear. I beg your forgiveness." And for the first time, the new Queen of Blackwood smiled, not as the hunted girl she once was, but as the moon's chosen heir. Avery turned to the once proud Alpha, who now knelt before her, and then to the court that surrounded them. The suspicion and disdain that had shadowed every glance were gone, replaced by awe, by reverence. She was no longer the White Witch, no longer the omen whispered in fear. She was the moon touched, their salvation. "There is nothing to forgive," she said, her voice clear and calm. "We were all deceived. But today, we stand united." Her first act as Luna was to heal. With Ryder beside her, she entered the infirmary, a place that had long reeked of sickness and despair. The wolves there were pale and fading, their inner beasts weakened by Malik's poison. Holding the crystal locket, Avery drew a breath and let her power flow. A soft silver mist spilled from her hands, curling through the air like breath under moonlight. It spread gently, blanketing the room, seeping into every fragile body. It wasn't a blinding miracle. It was quieter, slower. The light caressed rather than burned, coaxing the sickness away, cleansing the plague from their veins. Day by day, color returned to their faces, strength to their limbs, laughter to their voices. For the first time in months, the infirmary echoed with joy. Avery had found her purpose. She wasn't just a seer, not a weapon, not a symbol. She was a healer. The heart of the moon was never meant to destroy. It was born to restore. Her bond with Ryder transformed. The tension that had once sparked between them softened into harmony. The push and pull, the pride and fury, they gave way to something deeper, steadier. He no longer saw her as a solution or a prophecy. He saw her as his, the other half of his soul. He spent hours with her now, not interrogating, not commanding, but listening. Listening to her stories about the forest, about the stars she'd named in solitude. In return, he let her see the man behind the crown, the fears he carried for his people, the ache he hid behind duty, the dry humor that surfaced when she least expected it. She showed him her scars, her solitude, the strength she'd built from the ashes of her past. And he saw her not as the ghost of the forest, but as the woman who had become his home. Their bond became a quiet song, unspoken, but felt in every glance, every brush of skin, every heartbeat that found its rhythm next to the other. One evening, Ryder led her to the highest balcony of the keep, the king's eyrie. The sun melted into the horizon, painting the world in blazing strokes of gold and crimson. Below them stretched their kingdom, endless forests and silver peaks glimmering in twilight. "This is all yours now," he said softly, his arms circling her waist. "Our kingdom, our home." Avery smiled faintly. "It's a little bigger than my cottage," she teased, resting her head against his shoulder. He chuckled, that low, warm sound she'd come to love. "I had your cottage dismantled piece by piece. It's being rebuilt in the royal gardens. I thought, maybe you'd want a piece of your old life, a quiet place to breathe when the crown feels heavy." Her eyes filled, her heart swelling with something she couldn't put into words. He understood. He saw all of her, the wild and the wounded, the girl and the queen. The council keeps asking me to set a date for the bonding ceremony, he murmured, brushing his lips against her hair. To make you my queen officially. Avery turned in his arms, her violet eyes glimmering. I'm already your queen, she whispered, and you're already my king. Her hand lifted, tracing his jaw. But I think our people would enjoy the celebration. He smiled, truly smiled, and the world seemed to brighten. Then he kissed her. It wasn't a kiss of possession or power. It was a kiss of promise of peace, after war of home, after wandering. The ghost of the forest was gone. The burdened king no longer carried his crown alone. In their place stood a healer, and her alpha hearts unveiled, ready to lead their people into a new dawn under the moon's silver light. And so the pale Omega, who once opened her door to a yard full of wolves, discovered she had not opened it to her end, but to her destiny. Her story reminds us that what the world calls a flaw may be the mark of one's greatest strength, and that true power lies not in domination, but in compassion. If Avery and Ryder's journey from outcast and king to soulmates and rulers touched your heart, share your thoughts below. Which moment moved you most? Every story shared strengthens our pack. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more tales of passion, power, and redemption. Until next time, run with the wild.